just in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah. Okay, so you went a little bit into the spiritual side of Lotus Birth then. So you mentioned the aura, and I'm just really interested in that spiritual aspect. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the placenta itself holds universal consciousness.
Yep.
And what happens in that transfer during Lotus Birth, so we know the physical side now, which is the blood comes across and the baby gets all of their stem cells and their iron and things like that. But what comes after that is an energy transfer. And people who are energy sensitive, as myself is, will actually feel and see this happening. I saw this happening with Marley, and I wrote a little diary on what I saw each day. And what I saw at the start, how I can explain it, is it looked like the placenta was kind of, we'll say, shaking. If you want to look at it from a physical perspective, it was like it was kind of shaking.
Like the energy.
Yeah, like you could see that it was just full of energy.
Yep.
And over the days, that started to lift from the placenta. And I remember saying to my husband, like, I can see that energy just sitting above the placenta now. And on day 5, that energy had moved up above Marley's head. So it was sitting at her crown chakra.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I think she's going to Lotus Birth tonight or tomorrow, because I can see that energy sitting at her crown, which means that transfer is almost complete. And she did.
Mm.
Yeah.
So by Lotus Birth, you mean she let go of the cord?
Yes, yeah. And she did it all by herself without me there. I was so sad. I'd been with her every second, and I think I set her up in the lounge room, and, you know, I went in there, I put my water in there and blankets and everything I needed, and I ducked off to the toilet, and I came back, and she'd started to cry, and Brock said, "Mum, Marley said, ouch." And I said, "Oh no, darling, she's probably just hungry." And I went in there to pick her up, and she wasn't attached to her cord anymore. And at first I was really excited, and then I was really sad because I wasn't there. And Sandy said to me, "Yes, but you understand this is her Lotus Birth, Michelle." And then I realised that my own personal trauma had come up from not having my own Lotus Birth. So I felt that loss. It wasn't her loss, that was mine.
Yeah.
And yeah, since then, speaking to other mothers that have Lotus Birth that I've been involved with, they've all experienced the same thing. So now it's something that I warn mothers about, that after your baby Lotus Birth, you may find that you go from this high of being in this beautiful cocoon. You're in the world, but you don't feel like you're part of the world. It's so amazing. And then you just kind of, you know, I don't know, it's like what comes up must come down. And also with all of that energy transfer, it's like a lot of sort of karma gets worked through. So through that, a lot of healing takes place. And healing isn't easy. So everyone who's around that Lotus Birth, everyone who's in that family, things are going to come up over the next maybe 1 to 2 years. It doesn't happen overnight. And yeah, it's like that opportunity for energy to move, it moves. And I definitely saw a lot of that happening with my family. And, you know, 1 or 2 years later, and I sat down and wrote about the healing side of Lotus Birth, it just kind of went, wow, I had this picture in my mind when I'd read about Lotus Birth and the healing side of it. I thought, oh, awesome, you know, my vibration's going to go up and I'm going to be a better healer and things. But of course, we all know healing's not actually easy. So yeah, the things I had to work through on that parent level because of working through my own family lineage.
Yeah.
So all of that came out. And I do believe that the Lotus Birth aided in that healing, which was much needed.
Speaking about the energy involved in a Lotus Birth, the day after Marley was born, I went around to have my postnatal doula visit, and Michelle, of course, was in the bedroom with baby Marley, because that's one thing about Lotus Birth, it really slows everything down. It really gets the mum to be in the moment with her baby. not thinking about the future or next week. And it's also a time when you really don't have very many visitors come around. It's a very private and personal time. However, the doula does come to visit the next day. So I arrived. Husband answered the door, and then he shot through into the kitchen and he said to me, "Oh, Michelle and the baby are in the bedroom." So, as if for me to just go in there. So I started walking down the hallway to go in there, and I hit a wall of energy that bounced me back. I could not just walk into that room. I guess I am a bit on the sensitive side, so I just stood back for a little while and thought, whoa, that was powerful. Then Clint came along and he walked into the bedroom, so I just trotted in behind him so I could get in that way.
And I find that interesting because I assume that's what my dog was feeling when
Yes.
my dog would not come up the hallway to the bedroom door. It's like
I
he
saw
hit
him.
that wall.
I saw him. He was there, and I saw him crawling on his belly into the room because
Corey was making him go in. Yeah.
It was funny.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
And
interesting.
powerful. Very, very
Yeah.
powerful.
And also there was one point through the Lotus Birth that Clint went up to the supermarket and came home. So I guess we'd all been in this beautiful little cocoon, and then he went out into the world where, as we know, there's a lot of energy going on. And when he walked in, I could feel every chakra in my body just shaking. And I said to him, "Oh my gosh, like you've made me shake just from that disruption."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll make sure I take a nice deep breath and just let everything go before I walk back in the house if I do go out again."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had so many different questions and things come up with you guys as you've been talking. I guess to begin with, Michelle, when you were reading out your story, your personal story, I just had lots of questions come up about the significance of the placenta, and also how in the wild, how we wouldn't have had, sterile scissors and clamps to obviously cut the cord. So there must be some sort of history there in terms of Lotus Birth. Yeah?
Well, in terms of Lotus Birth, there is no need for cutting.
Yep.
And so therefore, there can never be any problems with a Lotus Birth. Nothing can ever go wrong because there's no way for an infection to be able to be involved.
Yeah.
There's
Unless
no
you
cut.
sit in front of a fireplace or something like that. That's just common sense, isn't it?
Exactly. When an infection does occur, it occurs because the umbilical cord has been cut, and that's where problems can occur. An infection for the baby.
Yeah, you create the site for infection when you cut
Yep.
the cord.
Yep.
And also I found, so a Lotus Birth would take, say, 2 to 6 days. Maybe it might take...
Sometimes a little longer.
Yeah, it
Could be
might
up
take
to
7,
10.
8.
Rarely, though.
I think the longest one that's ever been noted has been 10 days.
Yes.
What I find interesting is then the baby releases the placenta, so the cord is removed, and
Yep.
of course we're all left with a belly button, which is
Yep.
our reminder of our placenta for the rest of our lives. So I also find that interesting. If the placenta meant nothing to us, why do we have the mark of where it was on
Yeah.
our bodies? But if you do cut the cord, it can take 2 weeks plus for the stub to actually fall off. So if we were doing the right thing, why is it taking so much longer to heal?
Yeah.
Yeah, and often it gets quite red and aggravated.
That's interesting.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Sadly, in the old days, we were told to put methylated spirits on it. I mean, that's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
How cruel. How cruel. Poor babies.
yeah. And there has been talk about, back in the caveman days when we really did just run off instinct, a mother would have a baby and then the placenta would follow, and you would just assume that was part of the baby, and then you would probably just wrap it all up and leave it. Our first instinct is not to cut the cord, and you will find that after birth, even if in your mind you're thinking it's disgusting, I don't want the placenta attached, and there are some people that do have that view, and that's okay, but you will find that if you just leave the mother to birth, and Roshana talks about this in her book, because this is how they started questioning, well, what happens if we don't cut the cord? Because they started questioning, well, why are we doing this? We don't actually know why we're doing it. What if we left it? But they were scared of leaving it. They're scared of the unknown, as we normally are. And so they just started leaving the mother, and they noticed that the mother would just go on about everything, and she would never turn around and say, it's time to cut the cord. So we know as an instinct that it's not actually natural to us to want to do that. We naturally want to grab our baby and feed them and hold them and kiss them and all these other things that we learn about bonding and, you know, what science is showing us. But when it comes to cutting the cord, no mother bursts the baby and says, quick, cut the cord. They just want their baby. And I would really like to see, particularly in our hospital system, that the baby's birth and the placenta is birthed before they do anything. Because what's happening is, even though we're introducing the delayed cord clamping, which, yes, is fantastic, at least they are getting the blood transfer, they're still cutting that off, and the mother still needs to birth the placenta. To me, it's just cutting off the natural birth flow.
Like disturbing it.
Yeah, and mothers also feel like once that cord's been clamped, everyone just forgets about them. They start cleaning up, they go about what they've got to do, and then they wonder why the placenta sometimes gets retained.
Yeah.
You know, if we have to understand that this is the 4th stage labour, what they class it as, and when the mother births the baby, we still need to hold that same space for the third stage. 4th stage. I'm like, hang on a minute. Yeah, we still need to hold that same space for the placenta to be born. We need the same hormones functioning in the woman's body. She needs to feel safe to let that go. Another thing I love about the placenta is when you do look at it, it has a picture of a tree in it. So the way that the veins sit, and that's why we call it the tree of life. And so the tree in the womb helps us to breathe, and then when we're born, the trees in the world help us to breathe. So how beautiful is that?
That's so smart. I really like that.
It's fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah. I have so many things popping up in my mind that I want to ask you.
Ask away.
I'm just wondering as well. Okay, I'll start with the first one. So how does Lotus Birth work when you're birthing multiples? Does that, I don't know if it's been done.
Yeah, it certainly has. And actually, Roshana's created a DVD of the Lotus Birth of the Malcolm twins.
Malcolm twins, I think, yes.
Yeah, so you certainly can do multiples.
It's a beautiful, beautiful DVD with those two babies floating in the water, or being held in the water, but sort of floating in the water, and then the two placentas floating in the water as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful DVD, that one. It is lovely.
And when you were talking before, Michelle, about the energy shift between the placenta and your baby, what do you think that was, that energy? Can you help us understand that in a little bit more depth?
Yeah, look, I don't think I 100% fully know that myself. I think over time, the more women that are in tune with this and the more we're doing it and the more we're talking, the more we're going to bring to surface and piece together, because people are going to keep picking up on things and it's all going to come together. What do you think, Sandy?
Yes, I think it's going to take time, and we're only in the very early days yet. I mean, let's face it, we've only had Lotus Birth in Australia since 1986, so... And really, there's not an awful lot of women know about it. Now, how does a woman get to have a Lotus Birth when the hospital really just wants to clamp and cut the cord? Well, the best way is to have a birth plan. And to ensure that your partner and your doula, if you have a doula at the birth, if you're in a hospital, that they remind the nursing staff, they remind the midwife not to give the symptometrine injection, because with the midwives they just do it automatically. It's just an automatic thing, and even though she may have read your plan and have the best intentions, when that time of birth happens, sometimes they just flick into auto mode, and oops, I'm terribly sorry, you didn't want that injection. Oh, it's too late, I've given it now.
And if it were to accidentally happen, you certainly can still Lotus birth, and even with a C-section, you can still Lotus birth.
Okay.
You may need to push a little bit. So one of the mummies I doulaed recently at St. Vincent's, her obstetrician